Well, how are the swing states reacting to this news as Joe Biden, of course, dropping his bid for re-election? He has endorsed Kamala Harris. Erick Erickson hosts the nationally syndicated Erick Erickson show out of Atlanta. He joins us on KCMO in Kansas City. Erick, it's always good to have you here. And what's the word on the ground less than 24 hours after Joe Biden drops his bid for re-election? Of course, Georgia's a place he won 4 years ago. Do you really think, and what are the people in Georgia saying about whether or not Kamala Harris can win that state?
Everybody's head's kind of spinning at this point as to what to make of it. Look, in 2020, Kamala Harris didn't have a base of support in Georgia. She had very limited endorsements in the legislature, if any at all. Joe Biden had consolidated his support here. She dropped out before Iowa. She never had a strong fundraising base in the state. Now, she has spent a lot of time in Georgia as vice president in the metro Atlanta area, campaigning for Stacey Abrams, campaigning with black business owners and black pastors. But she still hasn't gained as much traction as Joe Biden had, and her nomination might take Georgia off the table. She doesn't play well with suburban women, including black women, according to most focus groups.
Really? Okay, because, we know the pathway to winning in Georgia is going to be a strong urban and black turnout and then winning the suburbs as well. And it sounds to me like what I'm hearing is maybe she gets some of the urban vote back, the black men that may have trended away from the Democratic Party, but it's more about the suburbs, or is it both of those groups?
It's both. Black men don't poll very well with Kamala Harris, and the suburbs don't either. And in fact, black women in the suburbs are very hostile to Kamala Harris. They don't view her as having a black experience. This comes up in a lot of focus groups with black voters. This isn't me saying it as a conservative partisan. This comes up in the Democratic focus groups that Kamala Harris is the daughter of an Indian and a Jamaican. She's married to a white Jewish man. She doesn't really have the black experience that people in the South connect with the black experience, and that's why she's never played well in southern states. And she's going to have to overcome this, and she doesn't tend to do a very good job helping herself on the campaign trail.
So then who is her base of support? Is it white progressives?
Yes, that tends to be her base of support. Granted, Joe Biden picked her in 2020 because she was viewed as a black female, and he wanted to reward black women in South Carolina who put him over the finish line. But she doesn't really necessarily connect to those voters. But white progressives do like Kamala Harris. She and Elizabeth Warren in 2020 battled over white progressives along with Pete Buttigieg. So her vice presidential pick can matter a lot. And as much as people are floating, for example, Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, Roy Cooper, the outgoing Democratic governor in North Carolina, probably is a better fit for her to connect to Southern voters better.
So Roy Cooper, you mentioned outgoing governor there in North Carolina. Is that a guy who would play with some of those groups in Georgia that she may be struggling with?
Yes, he's done a very good job in the Charlotte suburbs, Raleigh, Durham, the Winston-Salem in North Carolina, have been able to get white suburban voters who tend to vote Republican to be able to vote Democrat. He's a friend of hers. They were attorneys general together when she was in California as the attorney general there, and he in North Carolina. So they're probably a better fit. I actually see John King last night was on CNN with Anderson Cooper saying Democrats behind the scenes are already concerned that having Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, who does make the most sense as her running mate, could hurt her with progressives because he's Jewish, which is kind of wild to think about that being said by a reporter, but it is kind of true. She's got problems. Democrats are, just put it to you this way. 6 months ago, New York Magazine's cover was, should Joe Biden ditch Kamala Harris? And today, all these people are saying, oh, she's a wonderful, wonderful pick. But 6 months ago, they thought she was a liability.
Wow. So what is Trump's lead, or what has it been in some of the polling there in Georgia in particular, a state that he lost by, 12,000 votes 4 years ago? Where has he been in the polling recently? So how much room does she have to really make up on?
Yeah, this is the problem again for the Democrats. Donald Trump has not lost a poll in Georgia this year. He's been at least 2 points ahead. Right now in the polling average in the state, he's about 4 points ahead, depending on who you ask. Kamala Harris doesn't poll better than Joe Biden in Georgia. She certainly does in some states, but in Georgia she doesn't poll as well as Biden did.
Wow. Erick Erickson, host of the nationally syndicated Erick Erickson show, is on KCMO in Kansas City. He's based out of Atlanta, of course, one of the key states. Do you feel like there's going to be as much attention on your state as there was 4 years ago, or are the Democrats going to say, we've got to save that blue wall of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin?
Look, I think that Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin will be tremendous for them, much more so than Georgia. If she goes with Roy Cooper, the Democrats may think they can put North Carolina and Georgia in play. One of the names floated is Mark Kelly of Arizona. They had a good relationship in the Senate. I'm not sure whether or not he would be a great pick, but they've got to focus on that blue wall up north. Georgia is a state increasingly trending outside the grasp of the Democrats, in large part because Brian Kemp, though he and Trump aren't friends, has a brilliant ground game in the state that will be mobilized for Trump.
Okay, so Brian Kemp, and many people will remember his beef with Donald Trump, or Donald Trump's beef with him is probably the better way to put it, from 4 years ago. He is willing to put his resources and his ground game in that state behind helping Donald Trump.
Very much so. It's a test run. Frankly, Kemp wants to run for the Senate in 26, and so 24 is a great test run to make sure he's got it as refined as he needs it for 26.
Wow. Okay, that's a big deal. So when it comes to Georgia in particular and how that state plays out going forward, is Donald Trump becoming more popular than 4 years ago, or is it just a realization that in a binary election, I've got to pick one of these two guys, and Georgians are just kind of coming home, so to speak, to the Republican side?
That's exactly what it is. Donald Trump isn't any more popular today than he was 4 years ago when he lost the state. It's just Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are deeply unpopular, and so the state's trending to the GOP because of it.
Wow. Okay. All right. Erick Erickson in Georgia on KCMO Talk Radio. What's the thing to watch down there if you were to tell us in Kansas City, hey, here's what we're watching in a place like Georgia, still a swing state over the next few months? What's that thing that Kansas Cityans should be looking out for in your backyard?
Where does Kamala Harris go when she visits the state? If she stays in Atlanta, it's not really a play for the state. She's got to go to Savannah. She's got to go down to Albany, Georgia, and she's got to go to Columbus, Georgia, military towns with big populations. They lean Democrat, but if she's not going there, if she's staying in Atlanta, she's doing it for show, for media market. She's not doing it to win the state.
All right. That's great stuff. Erick, thank you so much for the time, my friend, and a busy morning. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, you bet. Erick Erickson, host of the Erick Erickson Show, nationally syndicated, based out of Atlanta, getting a swing state perspective on what this all means moving forward on KCMO 95.7 FM.